So if you haven't heard of us, Project Oracle is a charity helping mostly other charities who work with children and young people in London, and we're starting to work beyond London. So I'm going to take you right back to the foothills. So the opposite end from the systematic review, but how do you actually get started? We offer training, one-to-one support for validation against our standards and evaluation placements to organisations that are trying to get going on this and thinking about where they first start. We also have a set of standards of evidence, and I have to say that the Nesta standards were based on ours, developed for us by the Social Research Unit at Dartington. And we think of them in terms of a set of statements, things you can say about what you are doing because you've got something sitting underneath that, some evidence that will support the statement. They are 5 levels. As you go from 1 to 5, you become more and more confident in that statement, in what you're saying. But we work very much, as I say, at the first end, standards 1, 2, and occasionally at standard 3. So I'm going to concentrate on those. So the first statement is, we know what we want to achieve. Same as the Nesta said, we know what we're doing. We've got a sense of what is the change that we want to see. And as Jonathan's already mentioned, we think about that in terms of a theory of change. So I have a lot of conversations with organisations who can tell me what they're doing, and they can tell me about the difference that they want to make, but they really struggle to tell me why they think those activities are going to lead to those changes, those outcomes. It's as if it's some kind of a black box. And so what a theory of change does is it helps you to work through in a logical way, so logic chain, logic model is another name for theory of change, why you think these activities will lead to these changes. What are the assumptions that you're making? And that's a crucial element of a theory of change that often gets left out. Why do you think A will lead to B? Is there some literature that you're looking at? So maybe you've looked at one of Jonathan's systematic reviews. Is it because you've done it before and measured it? But why do you think this is going on? What do you want to test? Which bit of that chain do you want to be testing and getting some data on? And the other thing you need to know when you're thinking about what you want to achieve is how you're going to gather the data. So we help organisations think about making a sensible evaluation plan, working out which bits on that theory of change they're going to be measuring, trying to get some information about, how they're going to do it, what tools they're going to use, are they going to make them up? We don't recommend that. Are they going to use something that's been tried and tested already? We do encourage that. And right down to the nitty-gritty, who's going to collect the data? Who are you going to collect it from? When are you going to collect it? Getting all that in place is a crucial foundation for understanding, are you making the difference that you think? But it is only a plan. So the next thing is to actually collect some data. So our statement is, we have seen there is a change. Something is different. Now, if nothing is different at that point, you probably might want to think about packing up and going home if there's no change at all that's observable. But we're talking here about before and after data, a baseline, so that you can then say it was like this here and now it's different. You can't say at this point that's because of what we've done, which was our example of the home visits and the young mothers, but at least you can say something is happening. And that is better than nothing at all. And I think one of my messages would be, this is difficult stuff, but we just kind of got to get started and not be afraid of it. And actually, any evidence is better than no evidence. Any good evidence is better than no evidence at all. And then the third standard, we believe the change is caused by us. And as Jonathan has said, having that counterfactual, having that sense of what would have happened if you weren't there, what would have happened anyway, is the only way you can say it's about what we're doing and not just about random chance. I don't talk about measuring impact. Because if impact is the difference between what the change you're making and what would have happened anyway, the counterfactual is an estimation. It hasn't happened. You can't measure something that hasn't happened. So I talk about estimating impact. Now let's not get carried away. That's all we're doing at this point. What you're trying to do is get the most robust estimate of what would have happened anyway to compare with your measurement of the change that's happened, and then the difference is the bit that you can say, yeah, we're reasonably confident that this has got something to do with us and what we are doing. Just to say a little bit about our validation process, we work with organisations, we offer them support, we can help anybody produce a theory of change and evaluation plan, and we think as long as a change is happening, we can help any organisation actually provide some decent evidence that that change is occurring. It's not an exam. It isn't that people just have to submit their papers and we mark it and give it a pass or fail. It is actually a whole process of support. Most of our validations, if you go and have a look at our website, are at Standard 1. A lot of organisations produce that theory of change and evaluation plan, and we never know whether they do anything with it. And I think a lot of organisations think, well, as long as I've got a theory of change, that's fine, that's enough. But it is not telling you anything about the difference that you might be making. So we have about half as many again at Standard 2, and actually for us it's a very small number at Standard 3 who do have that counterfactual. But we want to just encourage more people to carry on that journey, and that's why we offer the support we do. I think just a comment about that robust and proportionate element of evidence. Often I find youth organisations wanting to claim all sorts of amazing things for a drop-in youth club. Now, you are not going to change somebody's life, if we're honest, if they just turn up, once a month if you're lucky, and maybe only once every couple of months. In that case, what you really want to show is that you're having that interaction with the young person. You're monitoring data, which is things like who comes, when do they come, how often do they come, what do they do when they're with you. That engagement is probably the best you can do, but if you do it well, it's incredibly powerful. You don't have to say, and then they're all going to get jobs. They've all doubled their confidence, which, by the way, is a meaningless statement. But actually, just to say that what we are doing here, the change we want to see in that group of young people is more engagement with sensible adults. We believe there are lots of good things that might flow from that. It would be terribly time-consuming and pretty boring for the young people if you tried to measure all of that. But actually, that's what we want to do. If you're delivering a targeted intervention with a specific change that you are trying to see in a group of young people with particular needs, then engagement isn't enough. You've got to be doing something more. So it's not letting people off the hook, but it's actually saying, okay, what's appropriate, what's proportionate, and not getting into that overclaiming one study and, yes, everybody's job ready by the time we've seen them twice. Not going to happen. So I just thought I'd finish with a bit of a case study, because this is a journey and it takes time. And I'm going to talk just very briefly about the London Bubble Theatre Company and their Speech Bubbles programme. So they have children referred to them who have speech and language difficulties. They take them out of class and they do a theatre programme with them to improve their speech and language and their confidence. So we've been working with them for 4 years. About 4 years ago, they got Standard 1 validation, and then a bit later, Standard 2 validation. They had an evaluation placement to help them look at some of their data and analyse it. They were part of our first arts cohort in 2015, which was training for other members of staff who hadn't been involved with us before. Last year, the University of East London did a randomised control trial for them, and now they're part of the Education Endowment Foundation's Cultural Learning Trial. So this is an organisation that has been on that journey, starting in those foothills and actually getting further than most, because they've got a very targeted intervention and they've got a good way of measuring it. And I would just say the things that made that work for them was that very early on they became convinced of the value of doing this to them. it was helping them improve what they were doing. Part of the measurement of change that they were doing was built into their reflective practice. It was building on what they were doing already. And they speak very eloquently about, well, we don't want to take children out of class unless we're absolutely sure that it's going to be better for them than leaving them in there. And so they were really convinced themselves, not because a funder was asking, not because somebody else was making them tick the box, but they could see how this helped them. So it can be done. It can be hard, and it's a bit of a slog at times, but it is so worthwhile when organisations really start on that journey and start taking seriously how to look more and more carefully at the change that they hope they're making.